Ugh. Jeez. What'd you get?
I got a iced soy latte.
Iced soy.
As per usual.
I got, well, actually, you told me the vanilla latte is insane.
I'm glad you like it.
And it's the most basic drink.
It is.
And I'm just,
I feel like it doesn't need to be fancy.
Yeah, it really doesn't. Like all that like spice and.
Yeah, like juniper?
What's
Sage?
juniper?
No idea. It's like Christmas tree.
Isn't it a flower? Sage? It's
so.
like they put a flower in it?
Don't you burn it for bad spirits?
You do.
I think so.
I did that for my house.
Oh, really?
It didn't help.
I was gonna, did it work?
No, not at all. No, they're still there.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Wait, yeah, it is.
Okay.
Katie.
Yes.
You are a therapist.
Correct.
Okay. That's cool. I'm curious, because of that, like, and you work with people. I've always been, like, curious, like, what's wrong with me?
Oh.
That's a big question to
That's
ask.
a big question.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think, it might take a little longer. Like,
yeah, I
figure it out.
understand, yeah.
But I think, usually where we start in therapy, like, when someone comes to see me, when the first appointment ever, I'm always like, well, what brought you in? Because that's kind of where we have to start. Otherwise, I don't really know what questions to even ask. I'm going to ask you about, like, it's me essentially, like, in a tricky way, asking about your symptoms.
Okay.
Without saying symptoms. Because if you ask someone, like, what are your symptoms? They're like, I don't know, I'm unhappy.
Yeah. Or they're all over the
like
place.
Shit. Yeah, exactly. So I usually ask, like, well, what brought you in? What caused you to make this appointment? Because that takes a lot of effort. So what would have brought you, if you were to come see a therapist and make an appointment, what would bring you in?
I think it's well, it's weird because I look up a lot of stuff about, like, psychology, and I look up the different categories, the different disorders.
Yeah.
And I'm always looking at the different symptoms of each one, and I'm just like, oh my God, that one. And then I go to another one, like depression. One. I'm like, that one. So my brain feels like a collage of every mental disorder. Like, it really does. Like, where I'm like, I'm just a little bit of everything in these things. So, but I would say it's a general sense of, like, unease and like a freight train of thoughts that just, like, doesn't stop.
Okay.
That is, and the thoughts usually aren't the best.
Yeah, like negative, like spiraling.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, negative.
Do you have trouble sleeping at all?
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
The thoughts aren't like.
Well, I've been having this since I was 13, so it just eventually I figured out a way to just, like, cool it off. It's
okay. So you have tools that help you.
Yeah.
Make you feel better.
Yeah.
And that's really what therapy's, or at least in my, like, what I do in my practice, is always giving people tangible tools, takeaways, so that you can still function and find ways to make it better for you.
Okay.
So so I want a couple things. So back to, like, when you said that you read a disorder and you're like, oh, yeah, me. Yeah, me.
Yeah.
And you're going through, just know that in order to be diagnosed with something, it's more than just, like, one symptom.
No, I know.
Because we all have, like, one symptom of things.
Totally.
And so while we all can have, like, depressive symptoms and episodes, that doesn't mean we have major depressive disorder. So you probably don't have, like, a gazillion diagnoses or anything like that.
Yeah, I know. But it's the like, I'll read some of that. I said one, but sometimes it's like 2 or 3.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh no, like, this is, I don't know how many you need in order to.
Every one of them's different.
Yeah.
But a lot of them run together. So what you're describing with, like, the freight train of thoughts, and I don't know if you feel, like, on edge or irritable, potentially.
On edge?
Yeah, just like, are you jumpy?
Jumpy.
You feel maxed out a lot?
No, I'm not really on edge.
Okay.
It's just I guess in certain scenarios, yeah, I would be on edge.
Like social situations? Are those pretty bad? Or
not really. I've gotten to this place where I don't really care too much about, like, humiliating myself or like, because there's no real bad scenario for a social situation that I've learned. It's just like, the worst thing that could happen is I say something stupid to somebody that I just met, and then they go, oh, that was kind of weird and stupid, but then they forget about it in 5 minutes.
Totally.
And then I'm like, okay, if they're going to forget about it, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. So that's like another tool?
It's a tool, that I've used, but it's...
Yeah.
I'm like, but...
Yeah, don't get too excited.
Yeah, you're like, oh, progress. But the thing is that it's usually when I'm alone that it happens the most.
No distractions?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
no distractions.
Because obviously you're not my patient, but my gut response, or, like, my professional opinion is it sounds more like anxiety driven.
Okay.
So have you ever had a panic attack?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are terrible. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
But the thing that's interesting about panic attacks is usually they continue to happen the more we worry about them happening.
Yeah.
So it's like if a certain situation or scenario caused it, then we like try to avoid that at all costs, or anything that feels similar is really triggering, and then we're like, oh my God, and then we can push ourselves into a panic attack again. And so all of those symptoms, like I'm kind of gleaning the symptoms from you little by little, sound more anxiety disorder-ish. But anxiety and depression are like cousins.
Yeah.
And they run together. And sometimes our anxiety will be really bad and our depression won't be there. And then they'll like toggle and the depression will be really bad. I don't know if that's your experience, but sometimes they like, and then when we're having a really shitty time, they'll happen together. And we're like, I feel terrible and super depressed, but I also like can't sleep at night.
Yeah. Well, what is depression? Like, what does it mean?
To have major depressive disorder?
Yeah. What does that mean?
It means that we don't enjoy things that we used to enjoy. Like, let's say I used to love playing guitar or snowboarding. Like we were talking about, I'm going snowboarding.
Yeah.
And I don't find any joy in it anymore. And all the things I used to love are just like, ugh.
Okay.
That's like one of the symptoms.
Okay.
Another is just feeling really hopeless and like helpless. And just not, like, it's kind of like why people say, oh, depression means you're sad. It doesn't, but that's kind of a component of it where you just, you feel really blah about everything. Nothing's exciting. And then there's a lot of other symptoms that go under it. Like you have to have changes in your sleep, whether you're sleeping a lot or not sleeping at all, changes in appetite, fatigue, difficulty concentrating.
It's just a constant then.
Yeah. And it has to last for at least 2 weeks.
Got
most of the days for most days in 2 weeks. Does that make sense?
Is there something called a high functioning depressive?
They're not diagnostically speaking, but yes, I believe so. I even have videos about that because I think that a lot of people are super resilient and we like white knuckle it and we function. Like I'm even kind of that way. Even when I need to get back in therapy, I'll like white knuckle it for a good 2-3 months where I'm just like barely hanging in, but I still get all my shit done.
Yeah.
So some people can just still get their shit done, but comparative to what they could do, it's still not really functioning. It's just we're looking at other people and we're being like, oh, but I still get things done more than those people.
Totally.
So I must be okay. But we can't really compare. I always tell my patients and my viewers, I'm like, you can't compare to other people. You need to compare you to like a year ago or you to last month or you to yesterday.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Well, I've always been like that though.
Okay.
Like for my own sake. Like I know that I've always been kind of, like what I said about the racing freight train. I would always call it a freight train that was on fire because it is like it feels like because
that just sounds scary.
I know it sounds really scary, and you're the first person I've described that to really. But it's like all the or not maybe not a freight train that's on fire, but it's a freight train that's going fast and inside all the people that are riding the train are all yelling and saying mean things to each other. They're just
So negative self-talk then. Do you talk really nastily to yourself about yourself? Yeah.
Totally, yeah.
And I think that's something that this sounds really silly and like totally therapizing you now. Are you ready?
Yeah. Go ahead. Please therapize me up and down.
So I think the saying something nice to yourself, 1 to 2 things. I'd start with 1 to 2 things in the morning and at night.
Yeah.
Like even keeping track in your phone in your notes or something.
Okay.
Will change your life. Because the thing that I think most of us, even myself included, we don't realize is that what goes on in our head about ourselves is often negative.
Yeah.
And we don't challenge those thoughts. We like accept them as facts.
Yeah.
But they're not facts, they're just thoughts. And there's a big difference between facts and thoughts. And so just being aware of that, I think is really important. And if you can you can try to change it into more positive little by little, you'll feel better.
Well, that's the thing is that when I think of something good that I would do, like or like a positive trait or something that I have, I always go, well, don't think like that. Because if you think like that and you start to think more and more like that, 2 things are going to happen. One, you're going to get worse at that thing that you think you're good at because you're never going to grow.
That sounds like a negative thought on top of a positive thought.
I know.
Don't think good about it because that shit could just explode.
No, because but you know what I mean? Like if you're, let's say you're, I don't know, you bake something. Okay. Like you're like a chef or whatever. You're a pastry chef. And you keep going, I'm the best pastry chef there ever was. Then you're not going to try and get better at that then. Because you've already limited yourself. So that's why, for me, I'm like, I can't say that.
But what if instead of saying I'm the best ever, this will never get better? Because that's not what we're saying, that you've reached the pinnacle of life and everything. This is just the creme de la creme.
Yeah.
Instead, we're saying like, no, but I like that. Like for the pastry chef example, you'd be like, no, I love my job and I'm really lucky to have it. And I'm actually good at it.
Yeah.
Period.
No, yeah, that's more of a balanced, like, healthy way of looking at it, yeah.
And if you can't think... Sorry.
No, I was about to say, and I'm not... When I think, like, of something I'm good at, I don't go, I'm the best ever. I go, oh, I'm kind of good at this thing.
Balance, yeah.
Yeah, but then I'm like, I'm kind of good at this thing, and then the other person goes, no, you're not. Be better at it.
But that's the negative voice, and you're trying to fight it with positive. And we don't always have to, like, fight back and make it believe it. Like, we don't have to believe it right away. Mm-hmm. We just have to, like, start the conversation and, like, turning it in a more positive route. Does that make sense? And if you can't say something positive, because a lot of people are like, well, I don't even believe it. Like, what am I, just lying to myself?
Yeah.
Then you can do what we call, like, bridge statements. So instead of saying something like, I'm the best ever.
Yeah.
I love this a lot. You can say, it's possible that I might not be as shitty as I think. It's just possible. Maybe.
That's so funny. It's almost, yeah. Like, it's possible that I'm not.
Yeah, I might be a little mean to myself. Maybe.
Yeah.
I might not be seeing all of the whole picture.
Okay. Well, yeah, I've also, the biggest fear of mine would be that I think almost too positively about myself. And then, I mean, we live in LA. This is the most egotistical place on the planet. And I'm always like, did those people start out just thinking, like, good things about themselves, and then it got worse and worse and worse, and then they become like a Kanye? You know what I mean?
I mean...
That line of trying not to think too many good things about yourself.
I wouldn't worry about that now.
Yeah.
Because we're, like, starting here, and we're looking at, like, Kanye.
I know.
What I mean?
Yeah, two extremes. I always go to that,
and if you're even aware of it, you're probably not an asshole like that.
Yeah.
Like, I really think that people become egotistical because, A, they don't have a good sense of self, so it's like a protective. Mm-hmm. It's almost like we're so afraid of someone realizing we're a fraud because we think we're a fraud, so we like put up this front. You're not like that, so let's not worry about that.
Okay.
So it's like almost like, I call it like puffer fishing. We're actually really sensitive and soft. We're like, no, I'm the best.
Yeah.
Ha! Like, keep people away, right? So I think that's more like the Kanye type thing.
Okay.
And you already just not having nice thoughts about yourself, so let's just get you to a point where you have like medium thoughts about yourself.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
And you're aware, so I don't think you have it in you to be that way.
Okay.
And I think another reason people become like egotistical jerks is because no one ever says no to them. They have, but we're not, I mean, no offense to us YouTubers, but like, we're not in that power tripping, I mean, I guess we could be, but
yeah. If
you were going to be, you already would be.
You mean like having a lot of like yes men?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, another thing that I was looking up that I was like, okay, this might be what I have, because depression, anxiety, I think I have that already, but those are also just, they can be symptoms of a larger disorder.
Totally.
So I was like, what was the one that I looked at? Oh, borderline personality.
Okay. There's a lot of misconceptions out there about that, and I'd encourage you not to watch like YouTube videos other than maybe mine on the topic, because people try to demonize them. But borderline personality disorder is something that takes a while to diagnose. Like, if you were to see a therapist, they should see you for at least 6 months, maybe a year, to track like over that whole time period, whether it's like cyclical, meaning like, is it like this time of year you go in a cycle and you start feeling this way, or because a personality disorder, sorry if this is like, I'm just going in, but no, like,
go ahead.
A personality disorder is more like part of, the reason they call them personality disorders is they're part of, like, almost part of who you are. They're not, we can totally fix it, but it's like more permeable and more, like, I don't know, you just feel it through everything you do. Does that make sense?
No,
kind of?
Yeah.
Where depression and anxiety can come and go.
Yeah.
It like hangs. It doesn't like come and go.
Got it.
Like
Yeah.
there.
It's like, it's almost part of your structure.
Yeah, I would say it's like palatable, like it's like palpable. I mean, you like feel it.
Yeah.
It's like all the time you feel it. And so anyway, so with borderline personality disorder, what that really means is that you worry about people leaving you a lot and feel really like nervous and anxious about that.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be alone. That's really like terrifying.
Okay.
And then super, super sensitive to any kind of upset or any kind of poke that someone gives you.
Sure.
They call it like being emotional burn victims, where it's like really sensitive.
Yeah.
And it's hard for us to regulate. So instead of being like, oh, that hurt my feelings, why'd you do that? We're like, ah! We like rage because we feel so vulnerable all the time.
Got it.
And that's kind of, I mean, there's a lot more to it, but in a nutshell, that's kind of what borderline personality disorder is. And it usually comes out of some trauma in our past, or just it could even be like emotional neglect. Like our parents weren't there to be like, oh, I'm sorry you feel that way. I that's so bad, but tell me more about it. Parents are just like doing their own thing.
Yeah, because that what you said about the parents, like my parents were very, 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 very supportive.
Okay.
And they were like comforting and just like everything's okay, you're fine. But what you were just saying about that, like I do feel that way sometimes. A lot of the time actually is.
And
like,
that's just the most common reasons.
Yeah, like baseline.
And everybody's different. Like it doesn't mean you have to have a trauma or your parents weren't supportive. Those are just the two that I see the most.
Okay.
But borderline personality disorder exists in people for all sorts of reasons.
Yeah.
And it could, I mean, a lot of my eating disorder patients have borderline personality disorder as well. Okay. And I don't really know why those are always correlated. A lot of it's trauma driven, but not always. So yeah.
So if you had an eating disorder in the past, is it more likely that you might have borderline personality?
I mean, I just know that we call it comorbid. They tend to be diagnosed together, like they happen together. And I don't know how that correlation works. I'd have to read more research to find out. But I just know that because that's my specialty is eating disorders and self-injury. And so I know that a lot of my patients who have eating disorders or self-injure also have borderline personality disorder. But not all of them. Yeah. It's not a direct 100% correlation. It's just, I'd say 40%.
Yeah, like a mixed bag. Mm-hmm. Because I had anorexia when I was about, I think, 16.
Yeah, because we talked about that on the podcast.
Yeah.
And that's why I wonder if that's kind of part of it for you. Like it might be why, and that might have been how you numbed out.
Numbed out what?
The eating disorder numbs out from the borderline feelings.
Oh yeah. I mean,
maybe I don't know.
I don't know either. All I know is with the eating disorder, that was a massive control thing. It had all to do with control, because I know in my life at the time my parents were divorced.
That's what I was gonna say. What was out of control?
Yeah. There's everything in my life was out of control. And the food was the one thing I could control, and working out a lot was one thing I could control. My body, I could control it. So. But then at a certain point, I was like, this is really bad. But I was doing it for I think a year. And I got really thin. And then I just got out of it. And food, even when I was older, was something that I kept controlling. And with schedules and shit. And I don't do that anymore. I just completely lost that control. But I think I've now transferred it over to other things.
Where'd it go?
Yeah, because the control doesn't leave.
No.
So now the control goes to because I like writing, so the control goes to writing, or I don't know, making shorts or something. That's where the control goes. I don't think I try to control people.
Well, usually we don't, because it's ourselves. It's always been internal, not external. And that's the thing about borderline that people have misconceptions too, is that they think borderline is always anger out, because we can get really hurt, and so we'll be like, what are you doing? Yeah, and we'll shout at people. Yeah. But there's also what I call a quiet borderline, where it's anger in. So it's we do things, that's where self-injury comes from. And eating disorders is we're doing things to control us. Yeah. Or to hurt ourselves, because that's all we can control and all we can do. Do you know what I mean?
I think so, yeah.
So instead of thinking, I'm going to lash out, that's too scary, so we're no, I'll just lash in.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. That was I'm not saying that right.
Yeah, no, because you don't want to lash out, because then it's what's the repercussions of lashing out?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's the fear of judgment probably too, right?
Totally.
So you're just wage the war inside of yourself. Yeah. As opposed to, okay.
Which can be the self-deprecating thoughts, could be self-injury, could be eating disorders, could be just deep depression, could be anything. Anxiety, panic attacks. Yeah. That's all inward.
Okay. And so obviously that's a rabbit hole to go down, borderline personality.
We could talk about that hours and hours.
But I think that I also had I had this weird thought, or I've had this weird thought for a while about disorders and categorization of emotions, because I was once again, like I said, I was looking at every single disorder, and I was cherry picking basically, not cherry picking. I was basically
look at the symptoms that resonated with you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, right. And I was okay, so every one of these basically I resonate with in some capacity. If I look at every disorder, but besides psychopath. Okay.
You don't have any delusions or hallucinations.
No.
So schizophrenia is off the board.
Yeah, I don't hear voices, but every other thing, I was okay, I feel most of those things.
Totally.
So then I was does that, I guess that's always why I was kind of against being. It's kind of ironic because I'm asking you to diagnose me, but I have in the past. I don't think this way anymore. But I was afraid of being diagnosed because I was afraid of kind of being put in a category.
Yeah.
Because then it made me feel less. I don't know. It made me feel like less of a person.
Yeah, totally. And a lot of people feel that way. Like,
okay.
It can be feeling like you're labeled, like, poof,
yeah,
that's what I am.
Borderline personality.
And I'm put in a box.
Yeah.
And that's what I am.
Yeah. I'm not like Steve, or I'm not
totally,
like.
Because you still be Brandon. Like, you still are, like, that's the thing is, like, even if we get diagnosed, you still are the, the Katie, the Brandon, the Steve, the Julie, the whomever, right? We're still ourselves.
Yeah. It's
just one part of what we maybe are struggling with.
Yeah. Yeah, and then what made me go back on that thought was going like, well, if a doctor diagnosed you with a cold, you wouldn't feel less about yourself. Like, oh, I'm not a person anymore because now I'm being labeled.
Because I had the flu.
Yeah, because now I'm somebody who has a cold, or now I'm somebody who has, I don't know, some kind of like a medical, like physical medical disorder.
But I like that you compare it to that because I always like physical health and mental health be dealt with the same way.
Yeah.
And people often don't, but it is the same. If you think about it, our brain is like the hard drive of our body. So if our mental health isn't well, our physical health won't be well.
Yeah.
Like eating disorders, for instance. Right?
They
directly affect. Like one will hurt the other. Why? And if I'm really depressed, I can have body aches. I can feel like I have the flu.
Yeah.
Like,
and also like, but if you have really poor mental health, you could suicide.
Totally.
Like you could end your life.
Exactly.
So it's like almost, if it's not as equally as important, it could be more important. Yeah.
And I honestly think a lot of our physical ailments can be relieved by taking care of our mental health. That's honestly like why my channel exists, why I wrote a book, like why all that stuff happened, because I think that people don't take it as seriously as they should, or at least understand. Often we don't know what we don't know, right? And we can be afraid to talk to a mental health professional for fear that they will diagnose or they will be like, this is what is wrong. But you can get multiple, just like you go to the doctor if they said, oh, you have cancer, you'd be like, I'm going to get another opinion.
Yeah.
Right? Or I'm going to see another person. I don't know if I like you. That's okay. You can get a bunch of different opinions. And you, at the end of the day, get to decide what you want to work on.
Yeah.
So, like, if they say you have borderline personality disorder and you're like, I don't think so, I think I'm just depressed, work on the depression. And you don't have to agree with your therapist or psychiatrist. You should ask them, like, why do you think I have that diagnosis? They should talk to you about it. Not all of them do, but you can ask. I think it's best to ask because it's your treatment.
Yeah.
So be like, why do you think I have that? Or if you disagree, this is why I don't think that's right.
Huh. Well, one last thing, too, that I was wondering was, and this is, I don't think I am this, but because you did the Shane Dawson documentary, like, obviously. And that was all about sociopaths.
Yeah.
And
Which is really fascinating.
Yeah, that's more of a, I don't want to say it's a glamorized mental disorder, but it kind of is.
It's very I was really surprised by even people being upset about it, like about the documentary, like talking about sociopaths and being like, how dare you say that their behavior's bad? And I'm like, but they hurt people. They can.
Yeah. Oh, they can. Yeah,
they don't.
Can.
Like always. Like it's a small percentage.
Well, when I said glamorized, like about sociopaths, like most movies that have an anti-hero, right? Like Tony Montana in Scarface, or like Tony Soprano in The Sopranos. They're sociopaths.
Like Dexter.
Or Dexter. They're sociopaths, and there's so many shows that are about sociopaths.
I know. I don't know why we're so, because I'm equally fascinated. I love crime, mystery, like I love like learning about serial killers and stuff like that. I don't know what that says about me, but
I think it's just the fascination with, like, I would never do that, so what would prompt somebody?
Yeah, I don't understand it.
Yeah.
So how, like, it gives you a view through their eyes, kind of.
Totally. And also what not scares me, but, like, when I see, like, a sociopath or, like, a murderer, and I'm like, it's just so weird, because that's just a person with a brain, and we have the same brain.
Yeah,
but
we are similar in some ways.
We're similar in some ways. It's not like they're another thing.
No, it's not like they're a creature. They're human.
They're just a
like
person.
Us.
And so and the scary thought is, like, there's something in their brain that's just slightly off, slightly this or slightly that, as opposed to mine. But if mine was slightly this or that, I could be that person. Totally. And that's what's scary. And, but yeah, I just, like, I was curious, because when I watched the documentary, which I thought was great, and I thought you were great,
thanks.
like, in it, and you were giving good, like, information about it, I was, like, listening to what you were saying, and I was like, no. Yeah, I was like, no, please, can't add this to the anxiety. I don't want to think I'm a sociopath, like, legit. And so I was wondering, like, what because I kind of forgot the I guess symptoms of being a sociopath.
So, I mean, the main one that people like go to is that you don't have empathy for other people. Like you don't really care if someone else is hurting.
Okay.
And that would be like the marker. Like if your girlfriend or your family member was in pain or something happened, you wouldn't feel bad. You wouldn't be sad about it.
Okay.
It'd just be like a fact. You're like, oh, mm-hmm.
Do you think there's also, this is kind of a sidetrack, but do you think there's something too empathetic?
What do you mean? Like,
well, because I know people that who say they're like empaths.
Yes.
And who
like
people...
Shane thinks he's an empath too. Yeah, and we've talked about that.
Totally. And like these are people that think, like there'll be a forest fire in like, I don't know, like Wisconsin, and they'll be depressed all day when they read about it because they think about all the animals that died and all the, all the life that was lost. And that's, I mean, it's not abnormal to be saddened by like something like
that. It's like a spectrum.
Yeah, there's a spectrum. But like I've known people that when something like that happens, they feel so much for that.
Yeah.
And it almost like messes with their day to day because they're like there's so much misery and chaos in the world that like I can barely function because I'm feeling like all that like in me. I'm feeling all the pain in me, and I wish I could do something to help.
Yeah.
But to me, that's a problem.
It is a problem.
Yeah.
If anything gets in the way of your ability to function in your life, that's something you should work to fix.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's not to say we shouldn't be able to feel for other people or other situations, because that's not really what we're talking about. It's just like there's a healthy amount for you to still be able to go about your day, and then there's going to be where you like can't go to work because there's so much hurt in the world. Yeah. Because there's always so much hurt in the world.
Mm-hmm. And I was wondering, because about the empathy thing, like I'm empathetic within close proximity.
Yeah, people who you know.
Yeah, within like people I know, even people I don't know. Like if we just saw a guy like get hit by a car,
totally, we'd be like,
oh my god, I gotta go help that guy.
Yeah.
And then we'd want to make sure that guy's okay. But like I'm saying, like about like forest fire. If I hear there's a forest fire, if I hear there's like an earthquake and a bunch of people died, I'm like, that sucks that happened, but it's not ruining my day.
But that's like normal.
Okay.
You're like in the middle of the spectrum.
Okay.
Because I think, and that's the thing is people like to put things in buckets, like black and white, all or nothing.
Yeah.
But there's always spectrums of everything.
Okay.
Especially when it comes to mental health. But like empathy, you could be super empathic and can't get out of bed because there was an earthquake in Thailand and you know that people died. Super depressing, super terrible. Yeah. And then in the middle is more like you and I were like, okay, it's in my proximity of people I know or things I see or people I interact with, and that's upsetting, but I still have to do my thing and like, you know, or I'll go help them. That's like where you are. And then there's the people who have no empathy at all.
So those are people that would go back to the example, see that guy get hit by a car and just be like, oh, okay,
cool.
Like, I
gotta go to work.
And then they just drink. And then they take a selfie of themselves and then they drive off.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a sociopath.
Exactly.
Okay.
I think that's what people have a hard time wrapping their brain around because most of us can't imagine not feeling anything.
Yeah, because it's scary. Because
it's kind of scary.
Kind of what being a person is feeling.
A lot for other people.
Yeah. Another thing about sociopaths, they're incredibly narcissistic.
Yes, tend to be.
Okay.
But narcissism's different. It's its own diagnosis. But they tend to just think really highly of themselves and they can do a lot, but not all. I mean, everybody's going to be different, right? Everybody within a certain diagnosis isn't exactly the same, but they just meet the criteria for that particular diagnosis.
Got it. Okay.
If that makes sense.
Do you think that narcissism nowadays is something that's way more prevalent than it's ever been because of social media?
I think there's more ways to fuel it.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's necessarily more prevalent. I always like to think that like things were always happening. We just A, didn't know what to call it, and B, didn't have as many ways to track it.
Sure.
Like back in like 1920, I'm sure there were still a shit ton of narcissists, but we just didn't know how to find them out.
What I was more asking was if social media, do you think exacerbates narcissism or can?
I think it can. It gives them a definite outlet. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't even know how to explain it, but it's like if they didn't have that thing, it might not make it worse. But I think it always existed in the same capacity, but now we have more ways to engage with it that could potentially, it's like putting gasoline on a fire. Yeah. And it's easier now to get that like feeling of self-satisfaction. Totally.
Than it ever, like in the 20s, in order to get self-satisfaction, I mean like, I guess you would just walk into the middle of the street and go like,
yeah, shout things.
I'm the greatest, and then people will go shut up and throw a newspaper at your head.
Exactly.
But now, like, you don't have to say I'm the greatest, but there are things you can do on social media that, like, I don't know, you can take a photo next to a Lamborghini, and then that's not yours.
Yeah.
And then you can, I don't know, like, hang out with a celebrity, or no, not hang out, but literally spot a celebrity on the street, take a photo with them, and make it seem like they're, like,
your friends.
Like your friends.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And then because people don't...
Or Photoshop.
Yeah. And yeah, totally. And you can Facetune and all this stuff, and you can show yourself with a bunch of people that are your friends, but they might not be. But these are all things that people will see all that, and now they're like, oh, that must be real and true, because we don't... But that guy in the middle of the street saying, I'm the greatest, you know that guy's probably a bullshitter.
Yeah.
So like, what I'm saying is
it's harder to sniff out the bullshitters.
I get it's not that, it's just it's easier now. Yeah, it's harder to sniff out the bullshitters, and it's easier now to like proclaim I'm the greatest and have people not only believe you, but to be like validated.
Like feed into it.
Yeah, feed into it, and then that creates more narcissism because of that. Because that guy in the 20s gets the newspaper thrown at his head. He's like, oh, maybe I'm not the greatest, and then he just kind of goes away, and then maybe that narcissism doesn't explode.
Totally. Because I think now people are almost like high on power in some ways. Like you have teenagers who are making millions of dollars a year.
Oh my God.
And like demanding people respond to them on social media and do like it does fuel that. Totally. And then they have fans and followers who fuel it too. And I definitely think that's a problem. But I mean, it's just like we have to find a new way to throw newspapers. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
I have no clue what that is. Like, I guess now that it's been around for as long as it has, it's like social media. I think now people are starting to sniff through the bullshitters.
Totally. And
be like, who was that guy? It was like a rapper or somebody who took a photo next to a private jet. And was like, can't wait to fly in this private jet. And everyone was like, that's clearly not your jet.
You're just like at this random airport taking pictures
of someone else's jet and posing with it. Like, people now are starting to sniff through the bullshit.
Yeah. Well, we have more tools, too, to see if something's photoshopped or what people are doing. And I think that, we are sniffing out the bullshit a little bit more.
So, yeah, basically, I think a lot of the people that watched the documentary were like, shit, I think I'm a sociopath. Yeah, because like I said, going back to what I was saying about you're going 1, 2, 3 symptoms, and you're like, that must be me, and that must be. But you
have to meet all of them, and I think people just don't like that empathy thing is like a big component of it, and I think a lot of people are like, oh, I don't feel for everybody like an empath. Shit.
Totally.
And you're like, no, like. It's hard for people to understand because they're not like that. Like if something happened to your mom, you wouldn't really care.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you're like a cold-hearted piece of garbage. That just means that like that empathy that you and I would feel to be like, oh my God, I have to go home. Sorry guys, I can't. It wouldn't have that.
Yeah. Okay. What's one more symptom?
One more symptom.
This is narcissism, empathy, and then.
Well, there's like no lack of empathy, and there's also like pretty much doing anything to get ahead. Like you'd step over someone else or hurt someone else to get ahead. And I'd have to look through the symptoms again because it's been a while. But there's a lot. There's also like you can struggle to like express emotions properly because you don't feel them. They like pretend to. You try to like mimic to fit in.
Well, that's something I thought was interesting because but like when you're a kid, you feel emotions, but you don't know how to convey them.
Yeah.
But like you don't know like.
But that's different than not feeling them and trying to mimic.
Yeah. I get.
You see, and that's the thing again. It's like, imagine those emotions don't exist.
Yeah.
That's what's like, your brain's like, no, what?
Yeah.
No, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And that's why it's really hard. But you're not a sociopath.
No, I just keep trying to go like, but maybe.
Yeah.
And then
no.
Okay, but it's like, that's just something I thought about the whole, like mimicking.
Yeah.
Because I think people, even who have emotions, and I don't think it's malicious at all what they're doing when they do this, but they do mimic other people in some way. Like if you're at like a party or something, and you're like in a group, like I've done this before, where I'm in a group and I'm in my head. I'm just like, fuck, I can't. And I've forgotten what people are saying because
of course,
there's
too in your head.
Too much happening around me, and there's too much happening in front of me, and I'm just in my head. And then I'm like looking around, so I'm literally looking at somebody, and then they're not talking to me, but they're talking to somebody else, and I'm trying to be in the conversation, and then I'm not, and then they like laugh, and everybody laughs, and I go ha, and I laugh too, and I'm like,
but that's not because you didn't feel anything.
Yeah.
That's because you're trying to fit in.
It's because I'm an idiot.
No, it's because you're feeling anxious or whatever, or you're worrying about something.
Totally, yeah.
So I think there's a difference there because, like, a sociopath would try to manipulate to get their way, and we all do some manipulative behavior to like meet our needs.
Sure.
But this could be like if you go through the symptoms, like we talked about in the documentary with Shane, is like they can break the law, they can like run away when they're children. They usually run away from home for periods of time. They'll hurt animals.
Yeah.
And like you just have to think of like those symptoms and the fact that when you try to mimic, it's more because you're like, oh shit, I was like too stressed and worried about how I'm feeling. Remember, they wouldn't have that feeling.
Yeah.
You know, like they wouldn't want to fit in because you don't want to. They just want to fit in to manipulate potentially or to get their way, make people like them.
Oh, like research. That's all it is. It's like going to a party for sociopaths, like research.
Kind of, it can be, so they can learn how people interact because they don't the social norms that we fall into and we understand how to interact and care for others and communicate. They have to learn that because it's like their brain isn't doing the same thing ours is.
Okay.
Because there are actually differences in their brain structure too.
Like actually, like they've done studies that show it.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
I forget exactly. I have a video about it. But it's like certain parts of their brain that are responsible. I want to say it's like part of the frontal lobe, and then another portion of the brain are smaller and not as developed. And so it's like the things that make us empathic and social and communicative, they don't have that. So in a way, they have to learn how to do that. And that's why like sociopaths aren't always violent either. It's like 1% of them. But in media, they talk about them being super violent.
Well, yeah, I mean, like even like TV, like Tony Soprano is violent because it's
Dexter. We eat it up. We're like, yes.
Love violence.
I don't know
why. No, I'm so curious. Why?
I don't know. I think what we like to understand what we fear, and so that's why we like watch.
That's why we like violence?
Well, I think because we fear like killers, sociopaths, and so we want to try to understand.
Yeah.
I think it helps us feel more in control. That would be my hypothesis, but I don't really know.
Yeah, I don't either. Like,
because I'm just as guilty. I love Law and Order.
Yeah.
I mean, Law and Order SVU, I watch all the time.
Well, you know what I think's so funny is when they went in a movie. So let's say there's a guy that the villain kills, like John Wick, the movie John Wick, where
Wick.
Yeah, it's great.
Even though it's kind of bad, but it's also kind of good.
Oh, it's that perfect balance.
It is.
Of like,
you're like, it's kind of trashy, but I'm gonna watch it anyways.
It's like, yeah, it's like it's like trashy cheese, but it's also like really well done.
Yeah.
It's really well done sleaze.
Yeah, totally.
But in John Wick, the crux of that movie is that his dog gets killed, and he goes out to kill the guy that kills his dog. So the dog dies. That's really sad. People don't like seeing dogs die.
Especially because his wife is like a whole thing.
Yeah, it's a huge. It's more about like what it means.
Yeah,
like,
the representation
of the dog than like But so that dog dies in the beginning, and then we're like, as an audience, we're like, oh, you have to kill.
Yeah.
Those
guys
guy.
are dirtbags.
Yeah, they're dirtbags. Kill them, and then when he eventually does kill them, it's like you're supposed to feel like yeah. But like. I'm like, but all they did was just kill somebody else after they killed somebody, and now it's just like it's like a cycle of violence, and so you're applauding one person dying and you're being sad about somebody else dying.
Yeah.
And I guess that's just because that somebody that got killed didn't want to get killed, and that person killed them.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? I'm being confusing.
No, you totally make sense though, because it is like a weird like ethical relativism where you're just like, is that okay?
Yeah.
I think that's okay.
Yeah.
Like as a society, if we watch somebody slaughter a dog and then someone like whacked him in the head with a baseball bat, we'd be like, yeah.
Yeah, but it's like.
But you're like, why is that okay?
Why?
We're still hurting someone. Why should we keep the violence going?
Yeah.
Shouldn't we just be like, put that guy in prison?
Yeah, or just I don't know.
Right? Like what's the?
But naturally in my head,
revenge.
Even in my head, I'm like, like you gotta, kill that guy. You killed the dog. And that,
like,
but I'm like, but that's not gonna. What is that gonna do? The guy's just dead, and the dog's still dead.
Yeah.
And then like these people are still dead. It's like it's not gonna bring them back to life.
And that is an interesting thing about society now, because I do feel like we're kind of like, not violence focused, but we're very like aggressive. Like social media has definitely brought out like, that kind of violence in people, like the aggression and like shout them down, like hit him in the head.
Oh,
like,
totally, like pack mentality, like almost like a mob.
Totally, and it's kind of scary because that just makes it worse.
Yeah.
Like we should work towards resolutions. Use our words, you know, not to like hit someone and knock them down and kill them. Like,
I think honestly, what you're saying about how all these things existed already, and now it's just like different forms. So like the 20s with the narcissism, like the throwing of the newspaper.
I like your example.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, shut up, idiot. So like that mob mentality, that's always existed.
Yeah,
always.
Totally.
And I mean,
it's kind of what keeps us alive as humans too. They say not to get like so sciencey, but they say that humans became like the top of the food chain because we can work together to do things, and like. If you know, like monkeys, for instance, or apes, there's only one alpha, and he'll kill the other males if they try to like want to be at the same level as him. And so it means that their packs can only be like 10 of them at a time. Whereas humans, we're like, no, you and I, we can get together and we can make this all better, like bigger. And like, it's interesting that that's like the mob mentality is like why we are successful.
But I mean, there still is those alphas basically who will, and
that's kind of what the other side, the 1% of sociopaths would kill somebody else.
Yeah, and but just going back to that mob thing, you ever see the Twilight Zone?
Yes, it's been a while.
Been a while. There's one of my favorite pieces of television is this thing called Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, which is basically, it's Maple Street's just like a normal suburb, and everybody they're neighbors and they all love each other. And then all the electricity goes out, and no one understands why. And basically, some electricity is starting in one person's house, and then it turns off. And then they're like, "Wait, why is electricity happening in your house?" And then it's like, "Why?
I don't have it.
Why do you have it?" And then they start to hypothesize that it's like beings from another planet that are like working with somebody in the neighborhood. And then in somebody else's house it starts to happen. And they're like, wait, hold on, no, wait, it's him. And then it's like, oh no, it's him. And then they all start to form this mob. And they, at one point, they're like, oh, it's him. And then they go, oh no, it's him. And then it starts happening in all the houses. And then in every single house. And then at that point, it's just nobody trusts each other, and it's just chaos.
Yeah.
And they're all killing each other. And then the best part of this, I'm spoiling this episode,
no, totally fine.
But it's so good. And they at the end, it shows the chaos happening in the street from the hillside, and it's aliens, and it is actually aliens.
Oh, and they're like, look what we did.
Yeah, they're just like, that's all we have to do. We just turn off some of their lights, and then they kill each other. Like, no shit. He's like, that's all we have to do.
That's so fucked up.
And they're like, is this unique to this Maple Street? He's like, nope, there's a bunch of Maple Streets all around this planet, and that's how it works. It's crazy profound.
Yeah, because you're like, why are we so violent? Why do we have so much hate?
Yeah.
What about just like use your words, talk to each other?
It's just going back to that.
But that's kind of how we operate, and it still exists that way. And that's why I'm always, when people get angry and shout at each other online, I'm like, it's just not worth it. Like, why?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's what I always think about that episode. Whenever
there's tons of maples.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Like when I see online, like everybody's just like attacking somebody. I'm like, that's kind of like
Maple Street.
Maple
they just
Street.
turn some lights off.
Yeah. Sort of. Yeah. And then people just go crazy. But
yeah. Wow.
But yeah. Okay. So basically, bottom line, what do I got? What do I got?
I mean, in my professional opinion, because you're not my patient, so it sounds kind of like you obviously had an eating disorder, and so that even though the eating stuff is okay, I'd still encourage you to like work on whatever caused it, like what that control thing, like how we can manage that. It sounds like you have great tools and you're working on things yourself, but that would be something I would consider. And then it sounds like a little bit of depression, anxiety mix.
Okay.
And the positive self-talk could help a little bit with that. But the anxiety stuff, is what I would probably focus on. That would be like my gut reactions. Like I think you have some anxiety disorder because you had panic attacks. And you still have some anxious thoughts. You've gotten good at managing them, but it could get you to a place where you don't have any of those thoughts as often anymore, only when you're super stressed.
I hope so.
Yeah, and that's why therapy, it can work. It's really, I mean, I'm in therapy too. Like I practice what I preach. I find it to be really helpful.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm assuming the coffee's not helping.
Probably not. But I'm not one to be like, you shouldn't ever do this.
Yeah.
I'm like, just limit your caffeine, especially as you try to work on the tools. If you find it makes it worse. For not everybody's affected by caffeine.
I'm not at all anymore.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, it's just gone at this point.
I could like go take a nap now.
Have you ever done that? Like had a cup of coffee before you went to bed?
I've had it like in the middle of the afternoon, then I'll be tired, like on a weekend, where I'm just like lounging. I'll be like, oh, coffee's so good.
Are your dreams different? Are they more vivid?
Oh, I don't know. I'll have to pay attention.
Yeah.
I mean, I always remember my dreams, so I'll have to see if they're more vivid.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Interesting. Huh. Well, Ready to go?
Yeah, let's go.
Get the hell out of here.